Hello, good evening, televiewers. You're welcome to today's edition of Prime Hour on My Media Prime. We this evening are going to be discussing on the situation of nurses and midwives in Cameroon. We know that this week is dedicated to these brave men and women who are risking their lives to take care of all of us. They are the first persons that actually come in contact with most of us when we are sick. They take care of us. They stay beside us in our most difficult moments, and this week has been dedicated to them. They are going to be telling us how their job has been ongoing in Cameroon, how their training takes place in this nation, also telling us what challenges they are facing in Cameroon. We are going to be discussing, knowing this from members of an association of nurses and midwives. They call them the Cameroon Association of Registered Nurses and Midwives in Cameroon. They are going to be telling us what they consider as the place of a nurse or midwife in Cameroon. They will tell us the good sides of what they are doing, the bad sides of what they are doing, why not the ugly aspects of the job they choose to do. We are in the company of Mr. Ngang Nche. He is the president of the Cameroon Association of Registered Nurses and Midwives in Cameroon. Good evening and welcome, Mr. Ngang.
Good evening, Mr. Leo. Good evening, televiewers. It's a pleasure being on your set. It's a pleasure to talk about a profession I cherish so much. It's a pleasure to talk about nursing and midwives, one of the healthcare professions who are the first to come in contact with you when you are born, and also with you when you are dying. So it's a pleasure. I'm here, and we'll be having much time to discuss some of the things concerning the profession. Thank you.
Okay, we also are in the company of Miss Eyong Queen. She is the Public Relations Officer of the Cameroon Association of Registered Nurses and Midwives in Cameroon. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, thank you, and greetings to all those watching us live now. It's really a pleasure to be with you today. Just like our president has said, we are nurses and we wish to come today to say that it's something we are proud of. And we are ready to share the little we know and the much we know about this very noble profession with you today. Thank you very much.
We also are in the company of Mr. Ndukong Emmanuel Fai. He is the Secretary General of the Association of Registered Nurses and Midwives in Cameroon. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Liu, and good evening to all the televiewers. It's been a long-awaited day, and here we are on air today to talk to the public, and most especially to our fellow nurses and midwives on this noble profession and vocation. Thank you so much.
Okay, yes, I will start by asking you, you say it's a vocation. If you are not called to the practice or the profession, you should not dare. What do we mean by a nurse is more of a vocation than a profession?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Liu.
No, Mr. I'm starting with Mr. Ngang.
Okay,
Okay, thank you for that very important question. You know, it's a vocation because the services nurses and midwives offer, they really can't be paid for. It's a vocation because they sacrifice so much to be there. Of course, it's also a profession because they need to practice under rules and regulations. They need a regulatory body. They have a curriculum designed to go through a program to be certified as a nurse. But then, like we always say, it's more of a vocation. It's a vocation first. And so if you don't have that mind to sacrifice, imagine you are on duty and you have to close by 2, but because of emergencies and all whatnot, you may have to spend the rest of your night again on duty. You won't find that with many professions. And it's part of why we say it's a vocation.
It's like a call.
Exactly.
Oh.
It's a call.
Yes, it's like a call. How do you identify that this call is like being a man of God now? Men of God are called. How do you know that you are called to be a nurse? Do people really, are people actually answering to that call, or they just sit and feel that I want to call myself into the nursing profession?
Okay, yeah. We'll say nursing is a calling because truly when you look at what a nurse is called out to do, if she doesn't have what we talk of empathy, that's being able to put herself in another person's place, or she doesn't have the love for one another, for other persons, then she cannot or he cannot really come in as a nurse, because the sacrifices you do is not to persons you know. Believe you me, imagine that you're sick and patients come in front of you vomiting, stool and everything, and you're called upon to clean all of that. Even with our own children at home, we find that challenging, but the nurse has to do that and do it even when she is so tired. You know, it's that person that will say, today is Christmas Day, but she's in the hospital.
Like journalists now.
Yeah.
They watch TV every day because we are always working.
Very true. Very true. Now, the difference is the risk involved. Okay, it's really high when it comes to nurses. Why do we say that? Because we are dealing with lives. You know, I always tell people that you could easily say 1 + 1 is 3. All right, or write that out, and you can wipe it out and you say no, it's 2. But when you're dealing with lives, such errors are very, very dangerous. It means even under pressure, you're still expected to give in your very best. Therefore, if you cannot make those sacrifices to care for others, then truly you cannot be called to do nursing.
Okay, you cannot be called to do nursing. We want to use this opportunity to say special greetings to you out there, who, all the nurses who are saving lives, especially to you, Anita Eno, Ndukong, who is doing a lot to motivate nurses back home and to create that link between nurses practicing in Cameroon and the United States of America. I'm sure we are going to be discussing that in the course of our program, and I know that you guys are also preparing a package of sensitization or a talk to the people in relation to this year's Nurses Week. We hope that your activities go so well. But now, you talked about the fact that it is a call. People do it because they are called, they do nasty things, they have to serve persons that they have never known, met, but isn't it also for money? Is it just there to because it's a call, you are serving people?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Liu. What I will say is that first thing, it is not for money.
Okay.
But now you cannot practice and live on nothing. That is why they call a vocation, because the first thing for a call, you don't put money first. You work and you serve that life first. Our motto is patient's recovery is our pride. Our pride is not money. Like I said, like Mr. Ngang said, from the other hand of the panel, Mr. Ngang said, if you are to be paid as a nurse, nobody will be, a nurse will never be poor, because the work they are doing, what they do to take care of these patients, to take care of their clients, is much sacrifice. So if they are to be paid, they will be paid huge sums of money. But first thing is work first. Patient's recovery should be your pride first before money is coming in. We are not refusing the fact that they should not be paid. Thank you.
Okay, they should be paid because they have to survive now. They have families. They are married.
Yeah.
They have to take care of their wives and children, and then send some money back to cousins and mothers back home. But how organized are the nurses in Cameroon?
Well, before I answer that question, maybe I follow up.
Add
to what the Secretary General has just said. It is true, it's a vocation, like we have all said, but then, like a profession, they should be paid. We are saying so because we have a number of employers who employ nurses and have taken opportunity for the fact we say it's a vocation and want to exploit fellow nurses. We would come to that when we are talking about the challenges. But then, as a profession, like you said, this nurse has a family. This nurse went through school and paid huge sums of money. This nurse also should be paid. In some cases, we say should be compensated, because we still stand for the fact that the services of a nurse, the services of a midwife, if we want to put that into monetary terms, then the package should really be high, which is what we hardly see.
Okay.
Coming back to your question as to
how organized
we are in the country.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say it's one of the issues we are having. We have different associations where these nurses and midwives choose to belong to these various associations. We have the Cameroon Nurses Association, we have the Association of Nurses, Midwives and Healthcare Technicians, we have the Nursing Society, and of course today you are receiving members or some executive members of the Cameroon Association of Registered Nurses and Midwives. Yes, it's an issue. We should have as many associations as we can, but then I think we still fall short of having that one umbrella, of having that one voice, where we from these various associations can be able to rally under and fight for the plight of the nurse and fight for the plight of the midwife. And it's part of our objective as the Cameroon Association of Registered Nurses and Midwives to see how in the nearest future we can have all of these associations under one umbrella to be able to fight for our common good.
Okay, but how is the Cameroon Association of Registered Nurses and Midwives in Cameroon, how is it faring? And you say registered nurses, who is a registered nurse, which according to you, and who is not a registered nurse?
Thank you for that question. I use this opportunity to say we have been existing for about 3 years now. We are pretty young association, and as you see on the platform, young people who have the passion for the professions and who have seen a number of things and are hungry to change, are hungry to put things the way it's supposed to be. We have about 700 members, both in the country and out of the country. And we presently have members in the Northwest, the Southwest, the Central region, and of course the littoral. As to how we are faring, I would say we are doing pretty good, because we've been putting in a lot to, first of all, mobilize fellow nurses to be able to bring them under the one umbrella we are talking about, to be able to know that the issues of a nurse can only be handled by a nurse. The issues of a nurse cannot be handled by any other healthcare professional. So we are at that phase, and I would say we are faring well.
So any member, any person who graduated from any nursing school joins your association?
Yes, exactly. You asked who is a registered nurse
and who is not a registered nurse.
Yes, generally in countries where you have nursing advance, I'll give some examples. In Nigeria, in Ghana, in South Africa, in the United States, there is a regulatory body, I should say a licensing authority, where after your training, you have to sit in for a certification exam. When you succeed in that exam, you are issued a license. That's when you are called a registered nurse. But in our context in Cameroon, we really don't have that regulatory body as of now. And so anybody who goes through a primary professional program of nursing. That is, after your advanced level, you are trained for 3 years to either have an HND, the nursing diploma, the HPD, or the degree. You are considered a registered nurse.
Okay. Who is not a registered nurse?
Well, just to continue with what
The President
has been
was
saying, we'll consider you not to be registered if you do not sit in for any of these examinations authorized by the state. For example, a state registered nurse under the Ministry of Health, after your 3 years of training, you have to write the certification exams under the Ministry of Health, or under the Ministry of Higher Education, you have the Higher National Diploma, and even in state universities, you have the first degree in nursing. Now, if you are not under any of those umbrellas, you're trained in a school, for example, which is not recognized, maybe which does not take into consideration the criteria needed for one to go in for a nursing training, then that person will not be considered a registered nurse. What will I say? You have schools where maybe somebody who has had a first school living certificate has been hanging around for some time, and he's convinced by one of these schools that come, who train you and will give you a certificate. Such persons, I've had examples of people at that level who go in and they do 3 years, and they are convinced that they are either state registered nurses or nurses with a higher national diploma, of which they are not. So those ones will consider them not to be registered nurses. Yeah.
And who would you consider or describe as a nurse in Cameroon or the world at large?
All right, thank you. I will first say, according to the International Council of Nurses, this is a federation of national nurses association in more than 130 countries. They have been existing for long, and they defined a nurse right way back in 1987 as that person who has completed a program of basic and general nursing education. Okay, and that person is authorized by a regulatory body to practice within his or her country. That is the international definition. But I will say that I want to say a nurse in the layman's way. A nurse is that person, as we've been talking, who is ready to do all those sacrifices. A nurse is that person who is there 24/24. Believe you me, doctors will come and go, nutritionists will come and go, the dentists will come and go. But the nurse is the only person who is there 24/24. She is always there, he is always there. Is that person, as I said, who will sacrifice even the family at times just because she wants to take care of other persons. Let's take the case of COVID now. We've seen a lot of videos, we've seen a lot of images where nurses are even struggling to sleep while standing up, just because they have to take care of their patients, because the patients are the center of everything. So I will say, in a layman's way, that a nurse is that person who is there 24/24 for her clients, for her patients, to ensure that they have good health, be it within the hospital premises or outside.
Okay, but must have undergone this training also now?
Of course.
Yes, but the training, when we look at training for nurses, where should focus be placed? Is it on how to the medical aspects or holistically?
With nursing, our focus should be holistic, which englobes the medical aspects, as you say, and nursing practices that are out of the medical aspects. When you talk about medical aspects, it englobes so many things. There are some medical procedures that should be carried out by expertise, not by nurses. Nurses have their procedures. Nursing, like a profession and vocation, is autonomous and collaborative, according to the International Council of Nurses. And what is the center of it is care for individuals of all ages, again, for those who are either sick or well. In performing those activities, they could perform if they were well, or if they could perform. In performing those activities, they cannot perform for them and lead them to a quick recovery or a peaceful death in case of patients. So, at this stage, nurses need to really work hard in order to achieve these goals.
Okay.
Okay.
Land.
Yeah, let me learn. What I wanted to say is that, like my colleague said, nursing in Cameroon and nursing out of Cameroon, we have the basic certificates, which are 3 years of training or 4 years of training to come out with either an HNZ, an SRN, an HPD, or a bachelor's degree in nursing. And we focus on healthcare.
Okay, you focus on healthcare. I was talking about the holistic nature of who a nurse is. We've seen some nurses with some very funny characters. They are not, you said they are supposed to be empathetic. Many nurses, how do we fail to build that aspect? They are also supposed to be very loving, which means that a lot of our focus is supposed to be based on the moral and religious aspects of their formation. Isn't that where focus is also? Because you are dealing with persons that you hardly meet in very bad, terrible shapes.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard, once more. Sometimes the way you ask your questions, I am tempted to find out if you are not a nurse. But I should say, clearly, nursing should be holistic. Yeah, nursing should be holistic in that you are not just focused on the medical condition. You are not just focused on the presenting problems. That's one of the main differences we have between nursing and other professions. Other professions like medicine, they are concerned maybe with a pathology, maybe with malaria, maybe with typhoid. But the nurse, for example, realizes or knows that this patient with typhoid responds differently. This patient with malaria, or the two of us, we have malaria, but the responses may be different. And that's why I have to manage this particular patient in relation to his response. Whereas the other person who has malaria, too, may respond differently. And so I will not box all of them and say, okay, 100 patients with malaria all need to have this treatment. Now, when we are sick, we are affected psychologically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and what have you. And that is where the nurse comes in, because the nurse is not just there to take care of that malaria, for example. He's there to also take care of those other aspects of health, be it emotional, be it mental, be it psychological. Imagine I am here, I am hospitalized, and I know my children need to write exams in the next 1 or 2 days. I don't have any money yet. My concern, my worry will not only be the malaria for which I'm hospitalized, but as a nurse, if we are not able to diagnose those other aspects, then you let it go, and the patient keeps on suffering. Okay. So that is what makes nursing different. Being holistic, not just focusing on the presenting physical problem, but also knowing that this patient has responses and may respond differently.
And they may respond differently. Madam Public Relations Officer, what is responsible for this attitude where nurses will always have to shout at patients? Is it that the patients are really disturbing, or the nurses are growing the more impatient? What is wrong?
Okay, thank you again, Mr. Leo.
Many patients are really scared of nurses, eh?
Yeah. No, I'll say that it's a problem which we have also identified and which has many faults.
Okay.
Now, the blame at times could come from the nurse as well as at times from the patient, as well as the system in which we find ourselves. All right, now, First, I'll say with the nurses, if the training, just like what we've been talking about, holistic care, holistic training, if the training itself that was impacted on the nurse did not take into consideration those aspects, okay, she might be focusing on the physical aspect of care, not knowing that just the way she responds to a patient could either hinder his healing, retard his healing process.
The father or mother would also receive a similar treatment from another nurse.
Yeah, because the truth is that when we talk about the patient, you know, we don't look at just the person that is sick. Even the family is part of that patient, and the care we should give as nurses should include and involve the family as well. Okay, but now, if the training from the beginning failed, you could have nurses behaving in that way. But other things could come in, like, for example, let's say the workload. I mean, imagine yourself in a ward with 40 patients as a nurse. Truly, 40 patients for you to, oh, my infusion is this, oh, my hand is swollen, oh, this and that. It's a bit challenging for you to be able to meet up with them all in the best of your ability. There comes a point where you two are tired. You two need a break, okay? But the system is such that you're alone, and you're expected to do 12-hour shift to attend to all of these 40 patients at the same time. That could be one of the reasons.
Private or government hospitals?
Even in the government institutions. Yes, even in the government institutions, nurses have found themselves with many patients, and you are alone to do all of these things. And believe you me, it's one of the reasons why nurses are like becoming robots. Because what they actually need to do, what we have a tool we call the nursing care plan. It means for every patient, you're supposed to be able to identify his needs, okay, and come up with a care plan that will help you to take care of that patient as well as the family. But then with such number of patients for one nurse, it's impossible for her to have the time to sit down, talk with you, listen to you. At the same time, another person is calling her the other way. So
does that justify why
it doesn't justify
why
no, it doesn't justify.
Most of your colleagues are rude.
That's what I'm saying, that it doesn't justify. It could be one of the reasons. But I want to also say that certain things are inborn.
Okay.
Certain things are inborn. Even if you're a nurse, you're a human being. And some of us come up with our trainings from our homes that maybe the nursing training did not succeed in pressing down, okay, and that person cannot be used to judge all the nurses, because believe you me, yes, they are there, but there are also very good nurses out there, which when you pass by them, when you're taken care of by them, you always want to go back to them. So it's like any other profession where you have persons with very terrible behaviors, very terrible characters, but it's one of the reasons why we are saying that we are coming out today to say no. There should be a change.
Okay, Ndukong, writing from Boya, says, please ask your guests why most nurses are so rude. Some appear to me like the most insensitive people. Had a confrontation with one and had to threaten her that I was going to do a report on her attitude before she adjusted. Is it the condition of work? Is it that nurses are not well paid? Oh, it's also because it was not their call.
Okay. If I might chip in something in that line, we know many are called, but few are chosen. It is a call, like we said. But now, if people are coming in that were not called, they will not work on that foundation. They will not be based on that foundation that a patient is always right. My nurse is looking at me, we're watching at me today. We should always know that what? A patient is always right, because a patient might be so abusive. A patient might be arrogant, but that patient, you should look at the cause of that arrogance. You should look at the cause. You should look at why that patient is abusing you, and not again abusing the patient because he or she is coming already in a bad shape. He or she has missed, might be her duty at home, like a father or a mother, or at the job site. So many things come into play, like they said, holistic, or like holistic care. You being that nurse that is passionate to care for people, the center of it is care and love. The center of it again is patience, and then the center of it is empathy. it's at the level of the nurse. But at the level again of the patient, many of them, they are arrogant. But like my colleague said from the other side, it could be burnout from the nurse. A nurse might have worked extra hours.
Yeah, but
the nurse-patient ratio, we know the nurse-patient ratio.
Do you expect somebody who is coming to the hospital maybe already sick, suffering, to be happy? No. Should you not already be prepared psychologically that most of the people, like he says,
yeah.
he said that somebody is sick and may not have a means to go look for money, yeah, to send the children to school. So we have other burden that they bring along aside their malaise.
Yes. Permit me use this opportunity to say it's one of the serious issues we have in the nursing profession, and it is not an issue that we should take lightly. It is often said that the patient is always right, but like she said, like the public relation officer said, this problem is multifold. Permit me tackle it from one angle.
Okay.
One of the things I ask my first year students when I meet them for the first time, because I'm a nurse instructor too, is what's your motivation for doing nursing? What motivated you for doing nursing? And the most often you get responses like the passion. I love it. Okay. And I tell them it is often easy to say this at the beginning, but we want to see 2 years when you are in practice, when that patient spits on you, when that patient insults you, and we see how you show that love. Mr. Liu, dear colleagues, dear viewers, I should use this opportunity to say, truly, many people come into the nursing profession not because of the call. Many people, from my experience, come into the nursing profession because they've tried a number of recruitment exams and it did not succeed. They've attempted a number of concourses and it did not succeed. And with the loopholes we have with the nursing training, it is, maybe the mother, the father, the relative outside the country. No, nursing they pay for white man country. Yeah, go do nursing. You just need to do nursing, and when you come here, you'll be well paid. Now, is it what this child really wanted to do? Majority of the cases, no. And you find they find themselves, it is now during the training complicated by the fact that you may have schools which actually don't take their time. You have institutions which don't follow the requirements needed to actually train these persons to live up to who we call nurses. There's what we call professional socialization. What does that mean? You should be able to see me and, that nursing fit this man here because of the things you see me do. This man is supposed to be in an army because of the things you see do. And you see some people, now we'll be sent this one for doing nursing. Okay? That tells you that that individual did not go through professional socialization. When we go through professional socialization, we embrace the values of the profession. And when you embrace the values of the profession, the rules and regulations of the profession, the philosophy of the profession, and then you would know that that patient who is sick has a problem, maybe because he cannot think well, he does not have enough strength, and he's responding differently, and it would be your role not to respond like you are putting more kerosene on fire. And that is what we strongly discourage. Unfortunately, we have the system where we have many of these persons, and I say it's not everybody who puts on white who is a nurse.
It's not everybody who puts on white. Emmanuel, watching from Boya, is raising an issue that I was going to ask also, we are talking about a call, and almost everybody is rushing to engage in something that is supposed to be a call or a vocation. Should there not be an aspect in the recruitment process into schools that are training nurses that can easily detect who should qualify? Because like she puts it, life is very delicate to be kept in the hands of persons who may have the character of a military person or, yes, some brutal persons.
Yeah, Mr. Liu, thank you again. I will say to Emma that what she's raising is really very vital and important, and we are happy that those of them watching are following us up, because sitting here doesn't mean that we don't know some of those things. We've identified those challenges, and as we've said before, it's one of the reasons why we are out there. Now, when it concerns the training, for those who have to come into the training, okay, yes, it's true that there should be a way to choose who comes in, okay, but how is this being done? Mostly through exams. It is like through, maybe they could say through an entrance exam, and if you pass, which has to do with the intellect, if you pass, then you've succeeded, okay? Because talking about somebody's temperament, you need to be able to study that person before you can say this is how this person will behave. And most of them find themselves already within the school environment, and at times, because believe me, when you're a student, you might respect or follow the school rules and regulations. I'll take, for example, they could say in school, don't put colored hair, mesh, don't be wild in your dressing, don't put heels and all. While in school, they obey because they have what they say an objective. They want to get that certificate. But when they are out there as nurses, they are kind of independent. Okay, they're kind of independent. But I want to say we have some nursing supervisors in some hospitals who strictly follow the nurses on duty. And some hospitals have put in place the anonymous box, suggestion box, where patients have had to write about nurses, and those nurses have been called for discipline, and some have even been sacked. So it's a call, it's something that truly should be regularized, but for now to say you should look at somebody, you weigh the person, be able to judge whether he or she.
It should be something that, I don't know, is selection criteria. No, it should not be for everybody, because what if a majority of those who are coming in are not carefully selected and many persons are put in their hands? You can imagine what our parents will go through working under their conditions, under their care rather.
Yeah, that's true. And that's why I'm saying that the selection for now, okay, is basically on education. You have your 2 advanced levels.
Okay, Mr. Secretary General, what is how would you describe the condition of work for a typical Cameroonian nurse? Are they well treated? Are they well paid? Or they're just managing to survive?
Thank you, Mr. Liu. Coming back to that again, we had that like a challenge. We have mentioned that in this panel like a challenge. Payment. What they have like monthly stipends is very, very low. I will take an example. Imagine, especially in the private sector, you have a nurse with a higher national diploma and a nurse with a state registered nurse. And you, that private employer, hire that nurse or employ that nurse like your employee, and you propose a salary of 45,000 or 40,000. That nurse accepts and then offer you the services. I'm saying so to the private employers because that is their barem of salary. Most of them, they pay less. They pay some less than 50,000. Some might go above 50,000, but it depends on the employer. But many of them, when I see job adverts out there for nurses, and you interview some that are working in these private clinics, they tell you 45,000, 40,000. Imagine that nurse that has gone through schools. I think the least nursing school in Cameroon, especially in the private setting, the fee, the tuition, and every other thing, centers, the range should be from 400 to 500,000 for 1 year. And then you train that nurse for 3 years. And then she comes out. And the employer is giving 45,000 per year. That nurse will not cover what he or she spends in school, like the fees. So what I can conclusively say is that the way they are treated, their conditions of work, the way they are treated as far as payment is concerned, is not the best. But conditions of work, most of them have too much workload. Like they say, they are, they call it what? All time round the clock, and then performing duties that are not even their procedures.
Okay.
They perform.
Quite challenging. A nurse who is married, has children, is earning 45,000 francs, less than 50,000 francs. How do you survive? And is it to say that nobody actually supervises the way you people are treated, or comes to ensure that you are well taken care of, given the fact that the lives of people are in your hands?
You know, our fellow nurses and midwives watching us would agree with us that it's one of the biggest challenges we have. A number of employers, I would say, exploit these nurses. In fact, if you go to embassies or immigration offices, majority of those preparing documents to go outside the country are nurses. That tells you that may give you an answer to the situation back home. If the treatment of nurses, if the conditions of nurses, so far as maybe the salary, if we want to look in that aspect, was concerned, was good, his concern was good, then you will not have majority of them going out of the country. But then there are many things implicated in this. We said earlier of persons who are trained, and at the end of the day, they are not actually nurses, but they are seen as nurses. Such persons will quickly accept such salaries. And in such situations, what happens? They become an obstacle to the real nurses who would have demanded maybe a better pay. Permit me share with you, we just had a report from one of the hospitals where the third, if not the third or fourth student from a particular school was dismissed. Students from this particular school have been recruited and realized that their practice was really substandard. But then this is a hospital that is renowned. In private or poor or low standard hospitals, where some of these employers want to exploit these nurses, they would not care. Yes, it comes to tell you why our association is existing, because these are some of the things we realize, and we want to stand up and say no to some of these things. We want to say that nurse needs good treatment so far as the salary is concerned. We want to say that nurse needs to be treated well so far as the working conditions are concerned. We want to say that nurse too needs to take good care of the family.
But what is responsible for this? Is it the fact that the employers, your employers, don't have enough money? Is it that people are treated for free? Or what would account for the fact that you are recruited to work in Yaoundé, in Douala, in Boya, in Bafoussam, and you are paid 45,000? How do you survive?
Yeah, Mr. Leo, as we've been saying, it's one of the major challenges. Okay, yes. Now, our country as a whole has the labor code and whatever that has to guide how workers or employers not so are taken care of, how they are paid, what should be their basic salaries and all that. But then such follow-up might not be very intensive. We are not saying that it's not there, it's there, but it might not be very intensive, which could also be related to the fact that we are voicing out these complaints to the wrong authorities or at the wrong places. Okay, that is why we say when there is an umbrella, when there is a mother, you know, when the mother or the father of the house is there, he makes sure that the children are fine. All right, we have many associations, like we said in the beginning, we are just one of them. But if we had that body that stands for nurses, like some people talk of syndicates, I don't know, which could fight for that, they could now speak as one voice. But because that doesn't exist, it's a laissez-faire kind of a thing. And as my president has rightly said, especially given the fact that some of these nurses are not really trained or qualified, and most of these employers do not even want qualified nurses, because the nurses are not even doing what they are supposed to be doing as a nurse in the hospital. So I think it's a problem that we have said has many folds, but it also has majority of, I would say the major concern would be having one voice. Because if we all stand for one voice and we say no, as a nurse, if I'm a state registered nurse or an HND nurse, or after 3 years of training, my basic salary according to the Cameroon labor code, for example,
you people are not telling me something. Is it that the nursing industry is poor in Cameroon, or what? Is it that people are treated for free? Money is not.
No, they are not treated for free. Of course, they are not treated for free.
Are they those employing nurses? Are they poor?
I will not say yes, and I will not say no. But what I know is that the population is not treated for free. Those nurses are there and they work the money for the employers, and they see how the money is coming in. But what they pay them is not what they are working for. Then again, I think what contributes again is that, like they said, if there is a regulatory body that controls the number of nurses to be trained for 1 year in Cameroon, and then based on the needs, it will be better, because many schools are there and each school is coming up needing bed money. They train and send to the community without a regulatory body. Those people, those nurses in the community, maybe when they launch, like the state recruitment, the public service launch a recruitment. Last time they launched a recruitment and they needed only 15 state registered nurses, the whole nation. Many people that are coming out from these schools, they will not have that opportunity to go in like state agents or civil servants. Then they will now get back to that relegation zone and will work anywhere they want. That is one of the reasons too that is leading to this poor payment, because they are there, many of them are there, and they lack what to do.
Mr. President, you are heading an association of registered nurses and midwives. The conditions of work are very deplorable. Going by what you people are saying out here, is the Ministry of Public Health not aware of this situation? Because I'm sure their officials always preside the graduation ceremonies of when you guys are coming out. They come and they speak good. They talk good on how people should go and serve. Yet, seemingly, they are not also following up to see how or the conditions under which you are working. Are you also engaging maybe some MPs? Are you engaging some civil society organizations to look into the plight of a Cameroonian nurse?
Exactly. There is money in the health industry.
Okay.
These employers make money. Patients pay money. But at the end of the day, most of the employers hang under the umbrella of, oh, it's a vocation, and want to exploit a number of these nurses and end up not paying them. But then, like I said, also, it depends on the type of nurses, because like we have said a number of times on this platform, we have nurses and we have nurses. There are those who have taken advantage of the weakness of the system, and you have quacks that have come in. Now you have employers who, because they want to go for cheap labor, go for such nurses, and at the end of the day, they are like obstacles to the nurses who are really there for the plight of the nursing profession. Permit me here to say that it's part of the problem we have. Yes, the Ministry of Public Health is there, but the Ministry of Public Health is not solely responsible for regulating payment so far as these nurses are concerned. It is one of the issues or the challenges we have seen that our fellow nurses are facing, and that is why we are coming up together. One of the first things, like we are clamoring to do, is to be able to come as one, to bring nurses from far and near to come together and speak as one voice. That said, we are already in talks. We are already in talks with some MPs to be able to see how eventually this will be passed as a law. We are in talks with civil society. We are in discussions with the other associations. So we see how we lobby, and you know, it's part of why we are here. To be able to sensitize other nurses. You know, some people, because of this deplorable condition, have become frustrated and eventually refusing to actually practice nursing.
It's not as if to say that our journalism profession is better, but I think, yes, you people have the right to also ask the employers to take good care of you. But how does the community value a nurse in Cameroon? Where you work, you live in a community, how are you seen?
Okay. Now, thank you again. I will say that it's the perception that the community has about the nurse varies. Okay. I will take an example of myself. When I went into nursing in my own village, there were many persons who were like, hey, she has a degree and she's doing nursing aid. Okay, first of all, it's like nurses is nursing aid. People don't know the different categories of nurses that exist because they are different. Some specialize even after the basic training. Okay, and the community see us like subordinates, or I don't want to use the word house girl or house help, but like those who have to follow the doctors behind for rounds and things and administer drugs. And please, fellow nurses, fellow viewers, the community, that is very, 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 very wrong. It's one of the things that we are really fighting against, the image of a nurse. Okay,
you should be respected,
of course,
because you
and we too have to fight that. I'll give an example. There are so many nurses who are very proud when they say, oh, doctor, in the community, doctor, I doctor, you know. I used to tell them, I'm not a doctor, I'm a nurse. But some of us nurses are ashamed, you know. We are not proud of who we are. We want to hide behind that uniform and think that maybe the doctor is the highest. But believe you me, in health, we have what we call the health team. And the health team means that people of various disciplines come into work for the good of the patient, or our client, as we call them. The medical doctor comes in with his own skills. The nurse comes in with hers. Maybe the dentist comes in. And even the cleaner in the hospital is part of the health team. Because if he doesn't keep that environment clean, then what we are doing might not have any effect. But now, because of the wrong image, the wrong ideas that people have, nurses are seen so much like helpers in the hospital, but we are not. If I should say in the field, in the health team, I will not say we are the very most important, but we are kind of very important. The doctors will go. The specialists will come and go. The only person that can tell you a complete information about a patient is a nurse. Because when the doctor comes, he asks the nurse what has happened. He does his and he goes. When another person, the dentist comes, okay, the physiotherapist comes. So the nurse is that person who is there. We have a song, we say doctors come and doctors go. Specialists come and they go. But here are the nurses in white.
Yet you are not given.
We are not given. We are not given. The community see us as, I don't know. And with the training out there,
is it not also because the community knows about how much most of you guys are paid? They place value on the fact that, okay, she's working somewhere, they give her 30 francs.
That is true. That is true.
What if nurses were paid 600,000 francs a month? Are you sure you would not be respected given the standard of living you would live?
I think you are right there, Mr. Leo, because even with our parents back home, you know, for most of us who were into sciences in a high school, okay, most were dreaming that their children will become medical doctors, because the belief is that they are paid better.
They take home.
Package is much more better. For a nurse, it's really minimal. But you'll be surprised that out of the country, we even have medical doctors here who travel out of the country and go in for nursing training. Because there, the value of a nurse has been really looked upon, okay. So you're quite right to say maybe because of our take-home package, because when our parents see us and call us like, oh, please, I need this, and you're like, I don't have the money, they don't believe it, okay. But it's believed that with a doctor or some other professions, you might do better. And it has pushed some nurses, because it's another challenge we've identified, to divert. What do I mean by diverting? After your basic training, okay, as a diploma nurse, you could continue under the field of nursing to other specializations, okay, in nursing. For example, you could be a psychiatric nurse, you could continue to be even a pediatric nurse, but like in our country, most of these career opportunities, advancement opportunities are lacking. Because the pay still remains very, very insignificant. The change. Okay, you're trained, you have 3 years, you go and specialize. You're almost at the same category. They just say maybe an increase in echelon or whatever, with very little change in the pay package. And so some of them find themselves diverting into public health, which has become very common, into maybe reproductive health, because you want to work with NGOs, which pay better. And some people have started having a different image now, because when they see those nurses into public health having a very big package, they're like, no, oh, then nursing can pay. So I think saying that the take-home package could influence on the perception. I think
my friend is asking, I know people who started up as cleaners in hospitals and are now serving as nurses. So my question is it on-the-job training allowed in the nursing corps? How does it happen that you are a cleaner and you end up a nurse? You go for training, or you are trained by observation?
Thank you for that viewer that is raising that concern. Yes, you can be a cleaner. Being a cleaner does not mean that you are not qualified. You can be a cleaner with advanced level. I take, for example, I have worked in hospitals that cleaners come in with advanced level because they don't have where to go to. And as they raise their money like cleaners, they go in for the entrance examination into nursing schools. And then they succeed. They go in for their 3 years training and they come and continue to serve like nurses. Then, in some particular hospitals, I cannot really say it is on-the-job training. Some might do that, but doing that is at the detriment of the hospital, the detriment of the person you are training to, because we are not doing trial and error on our human beings.
So there are actually cases where people graduate from cleaners to nurses in some hospitals?
They don't graduate like on the job. They might go in for their exams, and then they might go in for entrance examinations into nursing school. Not that they are trained on the job. Okay. Yes.
Nobody does that.
Okay. Let me add my voice to this by saying nursing is a science and nursing is an art.
Okay.
I don't know if you've been sick before. If you've not been sick, probably you've had persons who've been sick and they will share their experiences with some nurses. Some will say, oh, I want me that this nurse took me. It took me, I no joy hear me, no nothing. Another person will say, hey, no, damn, for saying me the nurse took me, I better I'll die me with my sick. Now, the art has to do with the skills the nurse uses in caring for the clearing. And we all know there are people who may have those skills, there are people who may have those skills developed. And we've seen situations where people can actually operate and do it well. But then, one of our mothers of modern nurses, Virginia Henderson, talks of nursing being an art and a science, because it's not just a skill. You need to have justifications. You need to have rationale for those actions that are taken. And for that cleaner who has been there to have admired the profession and wants to become a nurse has to therefore go through the training to have those scientific justifications, rationale for the action he or she eventually takes so far as the profession is concerned, even if he has the skill. Otherwise, somebody who practices, who has the skills, and is able to practice well without scientific justification will be considered as malpractice.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Maybe some persons have questions for you guys. If you have questions for them, just send the questions I'll ask so that they can provide answers. At least they are experienced nurses. Yes. Good evening, Mr. Liu. The nurses on the panel, despite the efforts made by most nurses, some patients are naturally troublesome and do not cooperate. Teke Listav writing from Yaoundé. Good evening to you all in the studio. I just wish to appreciate you guys for the job you guys are doing. Nursing, like any other profession, has good and bad people. More grace to those called by nurses of the name. Special greetings to Mr. Ngang, Nelson and his colleagues, through Joseph Aka, Lord Mayor, writing from Bamenda. Good evening to you, Lord Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Liu and crew. Quality practice begins with quality training, and quality service is rendered by quality professionals. Good and enable working environment and tools for practice. Identify the odds and bring out efficiency and diligent services for all clients. Professional ethics helps us discipline the undisciplined. Felix Egbe is writing from the United Arab Emirates. Mo writing from Yaoundé says, good evening, Mr. Liu. I'm Mo from Yaoundé. Personally, I know the job of a nurse is not an easy one, and I encourage them all. But please, some of you are very rude to patients. I remember how a nurse shouted at me while I was in labor pains. My courage to you all. Mo, we apologize for that. Let me apologize.
Yes, we too.
Hi, Mr. Liu. Greetings to the panelists. I love this program. Layu Donatus is writing from Yaoundé. Nurses collaborate with other health professionals. They are not subordinate to anyone. Okay? Yes. Tell them that a nurse is an auxiliary staff in the health sector. Maimo is writing from Bamenda. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Loving this program. Hello to Madame Quinta. She has been so proud of being a nurse and has taught me so much. Merela is writing from Kumba. Good evening to you. Anita Eno Takan writes that hello, Mr. KUM and Panelists. Happy Nurses Week coming up to you all nurses. My question is, what is lacking in the nursing curriculum that makes Cameroonian nurses, besides nurses from other countries, has to go to school all over in the United States of America? How can we bridge the gap? Okay, I hope someone has taken note how to bridge the gap between what obtains in Cameroon and out of Cameroon. Good evening, Mr. KUM. I just wish to ask the place of ethics and deontology in the training of a nurse and a midwife. Okay. Can we just note some of those worries raised? Good evening, Mr. Leo. Please, I wish to ask a nurse and a medical doctor who is more important. Sam Rich is writing from Yaoundé. They are both important because a medical doctor cannot work alone, and a nurse also will not work without a medical doctor. So they both are important. Salut, say cancel. Okay. I don't know. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and greetings to the healthcare workers in the studio, especially Mr. Ndukong, Emmanuel. Nurses, like teachers, are over-minimized. We can only pray for improvement and better days ahead. Eyong Brian, writing from Bomenda. Good evening, Mr. Liu and the nurses in the studio. Good job. Ask the nurses to discuss about the slavery nurses are doing in hospitals called volunteer without salary. Ken Fak, okay, writing there. Okay, Cindy Kenfak from Kumbai says, good evening, Mr. Leo. Thanks for the program. As the nurses to throw light to slave working in hospitals called volunteer with no salary. I hope you guys are taking note. Okay. Hello, Mr. Leo. What of those nurses who serve in government hospitals as volunteer without any pay? Ask this question to your panelists. Thank you. Pa John is writing from Limbe. This is a second person writing this. This one says, a colleague paid my sister 30,000 francs a month in the, okay. Oops. Good evening, Mr. Liu and nurses on the panel. Nurses in all hospitals behave as they are not paid. Rather, nurses are arrogant than patients. The man in pink t-shirt said he has said it all. Gideon is writing from Mutengene. Greetings, Mr. Liu, and to humble nurses. I just want to tell my nurses in the studio that there is no justification for the rude and harsh behaviors of some nurses. The truth is, from the behaviors of our nurses, especially those in public hospitals, one would be right to conclude that most of them join the field not out of passion, but frustration and for remuneration. And this accounts for most of the unethical behaviors we see in these nurses. Case study, female nurses. El Haji Mohammed, writing from Yaoundé. Good evening, Mr. Leo. Why do you people refuse HPD holders from joining the nursing orders? I went to the Red Cross in Yaoundé to get registered under the nursing order, and I was told it's not recognized there, and I almost collapsed. Christy is writing from Yaoundé. Good evening, sir. I want to know why the government frustrates people in the name of training state-registered nurses without recruiting them. Meanwhile, the fee in course of training is very high. Derek is writing from Douala. Mr. Liu, what these health workers are talking about are really true. In a world where there are about 12 workers, 2 are government employed, while the rest are temporal workers. Okay. Good evening to all of you in the studio. Nurses are respected and play an important role in the health system, but the actions of some of them in hospitals abuse the profession. Some indulge in illegal sale of drugs, extort money out of patients, and sometimes avoid attending to patients because they didn't buy drugs from them. How can this situation be addressed? Martin, writing from Bangem. Some of these messages have come in, but I would like us to take a listen to Mr. Fungjon, who will be talking about the conditions of communication, especially when it comes to this ongoing COVID-19.
On daily basis, that we have colleagues who can pinpoint what we are doing and comment. We know we at the gut flight with our social barometer, but it is not often the reality to see us celebrating ourselves. So I want to thank Prime Media for that. With regards to the challenges, well, they are enormous. You already said it, before becoming a service manager, I'm a health communicator. So working in a COVID environment, COVID context, is always very, very challenging and uphill task. Why? Because first of all, I've worked within the area of vaccination for close to 15 years, but I've never felt this today because it was a new scourge, a pandemic that we have never managed. So we had communication difficulties. That is why we see communication almost came at the tail end of the pandemic. And when it comes like that, it becomes challenging. Because in normal vaccination or mass vaccination activities, communication precedes, it comes a priori, it doesn't come a posteriori. It means that in order to effectively manage a vaccination or a pandemic and epidemic, we begin by talking, communicating, especially with regards to behavior change of communication. So this time around, it was not easy. The director mentioned some of the challenges that people were not ready to accept. First of all, they thought this pandemic was a myth. It was a man-made. It was only this time for the government and international body to make money. So we had the uphill task to educate, to sensitize, to mobilize the population to understand that this is real and that we should start implementing, practicing barrier measures. It wasn't easy at all. And I am happy because gradually, you see, the denial syndrome is gradually going decrescendo. It wasn't the effect. And you can see people coming to the hospital. And as I said, we started this, it wasn't easy. And for your information, while communicating to stem the spread of the disease, we were contaminated. Then we took it as a challenge. And it was more challenging because we have to testify, we have to tell the public that even though we are fighting with it, I can also be contaminated. It was to demystify the mystery surrounding the COVID 2019. So the challenges were enormous, coming in a very poor backdrop, coming within a double crisis, the Anglophone crisis and the COVID crisis. It was becoming more and more challenging. More to that, we were equally kidnapped. But did we lose our determination? It rather galvanized us. It rather gave us the courage that within this crisis, you suffer. In the two crises, you suffer. You are kidnapped in a crisis. You contract COVID in that same crisis. As a health communicator, I took it as a challenge. If Prime Media has recognized that, I think I can only say thank you, and it's a wonderful job. Let's continue to, sing and dance our songs. We should not stop dancing to the demagogic symphony of so-called political, social, and economic iconoclasts. Why can we not sing our songs and dance? I will use this opportunity to invite my colleagues, please get into health communication. It may not pay today, it will pay tomorrow. You not only learn, you actually put your foot in the sand of history. When you do such a job, you may not have the money, but you may build mountains, you may build your skyscrapers in the minds of people. It's very important. So I want to thank you.
Okay, take home lesson from Mr. Fung John. There he works with the Bamenda Regional Hospital in the context of COVID-19. The nurses also, you guys are at the front line of this whole stuff. Not too easy for you, very risky.
Very risky, because as I earlier on said, and as we've been emphasizing, you are the person that has to care for that patient, and the care here doesn't just mean administering drugs.
And when the patient arrives at the hospital, you are the person, the
first person to receive, and even the last, because in nursing training we even have what we call last offices, where nurses have to take care of the corpse, the person that just died, before it's sent to the mortuary. Okay, so the nurse is there from the beginning till the end. It's either he is going out well or he dies, which are the two extremes we have. Okay, but the nurses are so exposed, because imagine we're talking about COVID, okay, and we know that we're talking of social distancing, but now you have a patient who cannot even turn in bed. And one of the things you need to do as a nurse is to be able to turn this patient from time to time so that he does not develop bed sores, as we call them, or other complications. And now you at times have to throw your whole body on that patient just to be able to tend that patient. How exposed are you? Okay, and even if you are in situations where they give you the protective equipment, okay, being in those protective equipments for hours, I mean, it's challenging. You've seen images where somebody has sweated until he's completely soaked. It is really, really challenging. So that is why we say, truly, the place of a nurse really needs to be taken into consideration.
What has changed in the way you people have been working in hospitals since the advent of COVID-19? Do you think that any special disposition or advantage, or would I say risk allowance or dispositions are made available to you people because of COVID-19?
I will say no in some situations, because we have been there, we have been taking care of those patients, and there is no risk allowance defined by the state for nurses taking care of COVID patients. If it is defined, it could be internal, meaning the head of that hospital, where the head of that treatment center can decide to say, okay, within this time, let's give them this, let's give them this, but it is not defined, and it is not written. So the risk they are taking, they take the risk as frontline health personnel in the management of COVID patients. Like PRO said, doctors come, doctors go. Other specialists come and go, but it is that nurse for 24 hours. And I will still repeat and say, they are working because they are taking it like a vocation. They are working because their patient's recovery is their own pride. They are working because they are not considering money first for those who have been called. But now, for those who just came in because they need remuneration, they are frustrated, they can easily get irritated with those type of services. But to be candid with you, there is no defined risk allowance for somebody caring for a COVID case. Thank you.
Okay, the COVID case, very difficult times for the nurses today.
Yes, exactly. Very, very difficult time, and moments where some nurses need to have everything. Whether is it really the profession I took an oath to be part of? You know, last year, I should tell you, was designated as the year of the nurse and the midwife by the World Health Organization. And coincidentally, the year came with the COVID challenge here to really see how the nurse, because it was reserved to recognize the efforts that the nurse or nurses and midwives have been putting in. And I tell you, it could not have come at any time better, because it came at a very challenging time, and the nurses who are the real nurses have been there. Yes, they have been there to be able to face with the challenge, but then it is not easy. Because of this, we have shortages in nurses, with nurses.
I'm sure many persons have abandoned them.
And you have, of course, people have abandoned, because these are some of the moments, like I tell you, when I ask my students, what is motivating you to do nursing? And when they say, I love it, I have a passion for it, I say, okay. When you start practicing and faced with such challenges, we would see that love, because that is where the love is will be tested.
Mr. President, even if you are caught and you see the dangers and you are not protected, there is no security guarantees, would you dive because it's a call?
Obviously, you need to be protected to be able to protect others. you need to be healthy to keep others healthy. And that's one of the reasons we keep on crying for the government, for the different stakeholders, to ensure that these nurses, these midwives, and the other healthcare workers who are the front line so far as this COVID-19 is concerned are protected. I use this opportunity to appreciate the efforts by the government, the effort by the Ministry of Public Health. You know, when they imported the vaccines, it is because of this they realized the work done by these front-line workers, and they decided that health workers be vaccinated first. Because obviously, if I am not strong, if I am not healthy, then I won't be able to take care of the sick. And then you imagine a health system where the soldiers are the one dying. You imagine a health system where the nurses, the midwives, who for majority of this healthcare system are dying because they are not protected. Yes, they need to be protected. They need to be strong to be able to fight for the weak.
Okay, fight for the weak. We are going. So many of those things were raised there.
Okay, yeah. Some issues were raised. We had like how to bridge the gap in training in Cameroon and abroad. Okay, because the question was like, how do I train here in Cameroon, and when I go out, maybe in Europe, you have to start all over.
Okay. I think that is a very important question, but most often people have misconceived, people have misconception about that. Mr. Leo Telovias, and particularly the person who asked the question, sorry, I can't recall the name. When I was my training, I remember I would hear this, oh, when you finish here and you travel abroad, you would have to start all over. But permit me use this opportunity to tell you that I have classmates who traveled, and they wrote what we call the NCLEX in the United States, and they were working as registered nurses. They did not have to start all over. Now, importantly, the person has asked about the curriculum. Maybe he or she is thinking the curriculum is not as rich as that in the United States. I would stand to say those are some of the problems we have. Those are some of the problems we have. Yes, generally we have curriculums which have been accepted, but then some other schools may want to lay some more emphasis so as to make their products even more better and comparable to nurses outside the country. But we have situations where any person now is heading a nursing institution. You have persons who are not nurses are heads of nursing departments. You have persons who are not nurses are teaching key nursing courses to nurses. Tell me, how would these persons be able to identify these gaps? And now, because we have the situation where some of these students can easily escape and have the certificate without necessarily having the knowledge, when they find themselves outside there, it becomes a bit challenging. Let me be very clear here. In the United States, and like in many other countries, if you are trained in Cameroon and you find yourself there, what they want to know, one, is whether your training was from a recognized institution. Two, they have to send your documents to an evaluating agency to evaluate your curriculum with what is there in the United States to be able to compare that. And if it's comparable to that, you would be given the authorization to sit for the licensing exams, just like the nurses who are trained there, who sit for those exams. And we have had nurses, I had classmates, I have students who've traveled and have written these exams and have succeeded. But the ones who were lazy here, the ones who found themselves in schools whose curriculum were not that rich, now realize they have so much work to do, and they have to do what? Start all over. So it also calls for attention. For those who have the calling to do nursing, mind also the schools. You go for training.
Yeah, but many persons also raise the issue of voluntary nurses. You work for no pay. What's happening?
Okay, now, just like we've been saying, like somebody in relation to this, somebody asked why she's recruited as a state registered nurse, and yet the government does not, that she's trained, sorry, as a state registered nurse, and the government does not recruit them, okay? Now, my colleague had said, imagine they launch an entrance exam for civil servants, and they're asking for 15 nurses. In a year, if we take just the government institutions for state registered nurses, we have at least one per region, okay, taking in about 50 students per year. It means we have about 500 students that graduate each year as state registered nurses, and yet we have 15 of them who might have the opportunity of being absorbed by the state. Now, the remaining 485 find themselves wanting. They are like, okay, where do we go to? Some are absorbed by the private sector, by the mission, okay, and others who don't have that opportunity, especially when it has to do with traveling, because one challenge is that they might be calling you for something in the north, and you're on the 40,000, 30,000, okay, and you imagine yourself leaving the northwest or the southwest to go to Adamawa or Marua to work for 40,000 francs. I mean, just your transport to come back home once a year is more than your salary. So some of them, to be able to gain and continue practicing, developing their skills, they find themselves under this situation of voluntary nurses, also with the belief that what has been going on for some years, after some time the ministry, I don't know so well about that, but asks for some of these lists undertaken as temporary workers, okay. So some of them think that going through that situation might enable them maybe get access to be recruited, but others is because they want to continue learning and improving on their skills. So it's a very big cry, because even if that is the case, the institutions that are the institutions where these people are practicing are supposed to put in place a system to at least give these workers something to take back home, because they do pay transport. We had a case one time where nurses were given 5,000 francs per month as transport because they're voluntary nurses. Yes. 5,000 francs per month as a voluntary nurse, and just your transportation for that month cannot be covered by that. So it's really a cry and a worry, and which could be breached somehow if, as we have said, the number of nurses trained is regulated, and also opportunities are given for them to work. We have opportunities are given for them to train. Some people will ask you, like employers, 3 years of experience. How do you get the experience if you're not given the opportunities?
Okay. Greetings, Mr. Liu and crew. I'm K. Paul from Bamenda. Thanks for giving the nurses the great opportunity to express their fulfillments and frustrations. The question of risk allowance and occupational disease insurance scheme for nurses must be taken seriously, because only healthy and secured nurses can give quality health. More grace to your noble professionals. Okay. Good evening to the panelists. Nurses that are not called have either left the profession or moved to offices during this time of COVID-19, while some that remain are rude to clients. Nurses are risk bearers. Long live to them. From Ngang, Israel, I nurse Indu. Good evening, Mr. Liu. The pay packet of government SRN is just 82,000 francs as compared to teachers who are trained for the same 3 years and are placed on category A, but nurses are on category B. Justine is writing from Barefoot. Good evening, Mr. Ngang. That's Ndesap Noel, your students, St. Jude. Keep on with your ideas. We are doing great today in the field because of your courage. Okay. Good evening to the panelists. I just wish to inquire if it's not a great importance that we consider accepting only the sciences-oriented students into the nursing field. Blanche writing from Bamenda. Good evening to all in the studio. I'm Gefi Nicolene of BNS, nurse writing from Bamenda. Knowing fully that the government can't absorb all the trained nurses is what most private employers have taken advantage of, but nurses are not permitted to operate pharmacies or clinics on their own. All is that we need to survive. What is the go ahead for those wishing to operate institutions. Okay, thank you. Now, how would you grade our nursing training centers in Cameroon?
Thank you, Mr. Liu. We don't have a standard grade for nursing training centers in Cameroon, but what I know is that the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Higher Education are the sole supervisors of nursing institutions in Cameroon, nursing schools and trainings. Now, what I wanted to say again is that schools, they just pop up. Schools coming up. Everybody wants to open a nursing school. So it's difficult to grade them, but it is the role now of that regulatory body that we are crying for. If that regulatory body was there, I will take you back again to nurses doing voluntary training. Why they are doing voluntary training? Because many of them are out there without jobs. If that regulatory body was there to regulate that training and say, okay, we need this number of students, nurses pay this year in level 1, in level 2, in level 3, based on the needs they have assessed as far as the human resource in the plateau technique is concerned. If they have assessed both in the public and private sector, they can be able to say, to regulate and then know that this number of schools are okay to train this particular number of students that can easily be absorbed. Now at the grading level, except my president has something to say again, to the best of my knowledge, we cannot really grade.
Okay.
them.
Good evening, Mr. Liu, and the nurses in the studio, and especially my sister, Miss Eyong Quinta. May God continue to bless you all. Don't forget God seeing your efforts. Cecilia Tambe, writing from Yaoundé. Success, writing from Kribi, says, good evening, Mr. Liu. They are teachers working in the hospital because of connection. The cashier in PMI Bomenda is a grade 1 teacher. Okay, Mr. Liu, I was surprised when my neighbor told me that they are paying them, but after 6 months in private hospital, she is a lab technician and the money is not even up to 25,000 francs. Okay, success. Good evening, Mr. Liu and all the panelists in the studio. I think the working condition of nurses and teachers should be relooked into by the government of Cameroon. I like your programs. Ndukong Wilson Bankse, writing from Mokolo in the far north region. This one says, Mr. Liu, most government nurses only give you attention when you tip them. I'm very afraid of them. One faked lab results for me and pocketed her money. Okay, yes, but you gave the money now. So, yeah, not also free. Hello, Mr. Liu. Ask those in the panel why some nurses, even those in government hospitals, are so unprofessional, administering injections which have not been authorized by the doctors, and in the end, they will ask you to pay a bill that is not known by the hospital where they practice. Yes, can we be clear about the training of our nurses in Cameroon? Because Anita said that there should be a problem, because when they leave Cameroon and they have to go practice elsewhere, they will need to go all over training again and sitting in for exams.
One of the problems we have in the country at the moment is we've been so certificate focused. It may not only be happening with the nursing profession, but we have the system in the country where we are so concerned with which certificate do you have. And that is why you have people with PhDs, masters, and they really can't back up for that. That said, I've always said, even if there has to be that laxity in other professions, like the PRO said, in the health profession, in nursing, where we are representing, which we are representing today, it shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen. And you talked about grading. Unfortunately, in the country, we have the good, the bad, and the ugly so far as the training schools are concerned. There are schools where people go through and you probably count the number of times they were in class, but at the end of the day, they are the first to have not just a certificate but with the A grades. Of course, there are schools which are doing their best to make sure that some of these things change, and of course there are some of those schools that are putting in effort, and it continues to be our cry that it is for this reason that we need the regulatory body not just to regulate practice but training so far as the profession is concerned. Who trains nurses? What is taken into consideration? We've had a number of speakers talk about professionalism, professional ethics, and all of that. Like I said before, we have schools where you have people heading nursing departments who are not nurses. You have people teaching key nursing courses who are not nurses. Yes, who have just, and it's a science and an art. With most key nursing courses, you need the professionals who had practiced, okay? And then now they relate it to you like a story, okay? It goes.
They're sharing experience.
They're sharing experiences. But we hardly have that. And now because some of these proprietors, because they are just there for the money, what happens? They get those cheap labors. They get those cheap employees. And at the end, we have, it's part of what we are having so far as the problems in the system is concerned.
Good evening, Mr. Liu and the panelists. I'm learning a lot. Some nurses, especially in government hospitals, are very rude and very unprofessional. Daisy is writing from Kumba. Good evening to you, Daisy. This one says, Mr. Liu, can you ask your invited nurses why are they always selling drugs, and if a patient don't buy from them, it becomes a problem? Okay, I don't know whether this one sell. One of the main problems is the nursing council in Cameroon. How will they regulate nursing activities when the nursing council cannot register in the council? Degree PhD nurses cannot register. Another challenge is which ministry is responsible for the training of nurses in Cameroon. Layu Donatus is writing from Yaoundé. Now, I don't know whether anybody has an answer to.
Okay, I think let me just quickly respond to the last speaker, or the viewer, sorry, who talked about how would you regulate nursing where the nursing council does not recognize some certificates. We stand again to say that is what we are lacking. We have these associations. The nursing council does not cover everybody. The nursing council, for example, does not recognize the HNT, does not recognize the HPT. Recently, it's recognizing the degree. Okay, but we stand to say we want a situation, and that is why I earlier said we are already lobbying. We are meeting the different persons concerned, civil societies, to be able to make sure that there would be a regulating body which will be managed by nurses, where nurses, be it HNT, be it HPZ, be it degree, SRN, would be licensed.
Okay. Now, are you guys celebrating this Yes Week? And if yes, how are you planning to do so?
Yeah, we are actually celebrating the International Day of the Nurse, which will also be joining with that of the Midwife, which took place today. But because of the closeness of the 2 days, we've decided to merge them. For this year, we've decided to organize some activities in relation to that day. And amongst these activities, we have things like a seminar. We'll have a 2-day seminar on leadership, nurse leadership, how to become a good leader as a nurse, which will be taking place on the 10th and 11th of May in Yaoundé at Fresh Planet Obili. We also have other activities, social activities like sporting activities. We'll have a matches that will go on between some nursing schools that have identified and showed interest, and we'll also have a walk on that day to let the population know that we are nurses and we do exist out there, and today is our day. Amongst these things too, we'll be having a lot of prizes that will be awarded. We want to recognize good student nurses from some schools, and even some workers, okay, who are like leaders, to like say, no, truly you're a good leader as far as nursing is concerned, and we want you to be out there for others to follow. So we are calling on all that all those who are interested, not just nurses, even those who are not nurses, but who are for us to join us during this celebration, which will be coming out from the 10th, 11th, and the 12th. We'll close the program with socialization.
Okay, you close the program with socialization. This is an association. Are there some benefits that your members get, or those who are not members, they are losing out of anything?
Let me first of all say, as a profession and as a professional, it is very important for you to belong to an association. It must not necessarily be a Cameroon Association of Registered Nurses and Midwives. We have other associations. If you belong to the nursing or the midwifery profession, you should be able to identify yourself under any of the associations. We are talking of the various problems we are going through. We can only solve these problems if we identify ourselves under one umbrella or under these different associations and are able to strike on the problems or push forward for the problems to be solved. Now, coming to the Cameroon Association of Registered Nurses and Midwives, what do you stand to benefit? A number of benefits. First of all, like the seminar that is taking place, or that will be taking place on the 10th and 11th. Members either pay a reduced amount or attend the seminar for free. Career advancement, career opportunities are open to our members, and we are able to support them. We support even schools, like she said, we'll be giving prizes, but then even to schools we give scholarships. It's also a situation where we share in the pains so far as members are concerned. Use this opportunity to share with you that recently we had a colleague who was sick, and because of the association we're able to donate 200,000 francs plus to able to support him. So those are.
And the colleague is fine now?
Unfortunately, he passed away. May his soul rest in peace. Yeah, unfortunately, he passed away. But then we are talking about the problems in the nursing profession. The medical doctors will not come and change these problems. The gynecologists, the pharmacists will not. So the nurses are the only ones who can change these problems we've identified.
So the key advantage is every nurse should belong to this association, and together you can force the government or policymakers to intervene to see into it that your working conditions are made better, the pay packages, and that you are not exploited, especially those who are doing voluntary service for forever.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, would you advise your junior sister or brother who is going to school to be a nurse?
I think if I should give an answer to that, it will be a very big yes.
Okay.
Now, what I usually tell, because I kind of teach too, I usually tell the students, you know, nursing firstly for me, being a calling or whatever was for myself and my family. Because believe you me, in a day, in a week, a week or a day doesn't go by when one of the family members will not call and say, oh, I've gone to the hospital, this is what was prescribed to me, should I take it or not? Okay. And doing nursing, it's like, it's for you first. Even if you don't get to have a job as far as that is concerned, but you're able to take care of your family to a certain level as far as their health needs are concerned. Okay, so I will advise any person out there who wishes to join the nursing field or nursing profession that it is a good profession, but it's also a vocation, and that there are challenges and sacrifices that person should be able to make. If not, then he should think elsewhere. I think it's a very good and noble profession.
Hello, good evening, Mr. Lu. Your program is the best. Cameroon government should see about fake nurses in the quarter, call doctors who open medicine stores and kill people. Yemji Paloma, writing from Kumba. Good evening, it is Mr. Nche. My worry is a regulatory body and the instrument on the creation and functioning of nursing schools. As all know, an individual who has no standing in urban areas will go to enclave villages and open nursing schools. Before 3 months, you find graduates without first school leaving certificates having medicine stores, giving prescriptions and administering injections, etc. You know the outcome when things get out of hand. Then the patient is taken to a hospital and ends up dying. What regulation policy is in force? Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I wish to ask if it is possible to do nursing with ordinary levels biology. Irene from the. Thank you, Mr. Liu. God bless you. Yes, definitely they will answer you. Good evening, Mr. Liu and panel. I really wish to appreciate the efforts of devoted health personnel in Cameroon, and I really wish to say that nursing and midwifery is a vocation, but nowadays many just enter this profession because they are frustrated, and more so the trainings given in some our many nursing schools is a pity, and not to talk of enthusiasm for students to learn. Good theoretical learning, but lack of practical formation at school and in the field because of bottlenecks by some health staff. Elvis is writing from Bamenda. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I'm enjoying your program. Please extend my greetings to Madam Quinta Eyong, Miss Nzume, writing there. Thank you, my media, for this opportunity for nurses to be heard for once in this country. Talking about the place of the nurse in Cameroon, I would say there is none. Number one, because they are placed under the Ministry of Health, always headed by a doctor who has unfortunately been idolized in our country. Both patients and hospital directors give special regards to doctors, not knowing that the wellness of a patient lies in the hands of a nurse who serves you, the patient. But a doctor will be given a comfortable accommodation, other benefits, but a nurse with a salary which is not even something to mention is not considered for any special benefits. 2. So-called associations of nurses are there to fill their pockets with registration they are asking from members and not fighting for the betterment of them. Okay. Say, I am Bamboo Romain, SRN, trained in Shisong, now working with the CBC in Kribi. Okay, but my advice to you is to join the association so that you can press for things to change. Greetings, sir. I appreciate your talks in nursing. Please don't mix a nursing council to nursing association. There is no council but associations that cannot benchmark standards for nursing practice in this country. I'll be glad to have your invitation on such programs. I would really like to throw more light on what this profession is all about. I'm Mr. Niba. Mr. Niba, please, can you, Mr. Niba, where are you? How do I even trace you to be part of these discussions? We would want to, I'll ask you one last question. We're talking about training schools, working conditions, regulatory bodies. What should be done? Because the working conditions are not so good. The conditions under which you work, I'm talking about the environment, not so good. You are not provided with housing and other things. What is the step that you are taking? Are you going to be mobilizing to meet MPs? Are you going to be mobilizing to meet civil society organizations activists to raise your worries, or are you also going to continue attending to other media platforms for your voices to be heard?
Thank you, Mr. Liu. All of what you have mentioned, we started with MPs and some civil society organizations. We have come today to My Media Prime, and then we are urging and pleading for us nurses to come together, have that regulatory body, and then speak like one voice, so much so that we can table our complaints, we can table our grievances to the decision makers, and they can obviously look into it. So it just needs that nurses will come together like one voice and talk through these associations and through this regulatory body. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. President, one last word to your colleagues and those watching us.
I would not say my last words without using this opportunity to wish the midwives a happy International Day of the Midwife, which is celebrated today under the theme Follow the Data, Invest in Midwives. We realize that over the years, the maternal and the neonatal morbidity and mortality rate had been on a rise. But recently, when the training of midwives was reinstituted in schools in Cameroon, and with the work that midwives have been doing, there has been a drop. It's not satisfactory so far, but the International Association of Midwifery Federation is saying today that if the government invests, if the government follows the data and invests in midwives, the situation would even be better. Now we would be celebrating the Nurses' Day together with the Day of the Midwife on the 12th, and like the PRO rightly said, the theme for the Nurses' Day has to do with nurses, a voice to lead. A voice to lead. We want our voices to be heard. We want our voices to lead. And the sub-theme says, a vision for future healthcare. We are a vision for the future healthcare if only we as nurses and midwives are able to stand against some of these ills that are plaguing the profession. We would be the vision for the future healthcare if only we would be able to stand to the call of us being nurses. And that's why we are using this opportunity to call for those who are really nurses. So we rally together and see that eventually we put an end to exploitation. We put an end to quacks that have invaded the profession and put the name of the profession in mud. We put an end to the bad image these quacks have made the society to see us, and we can only do that, or that can only be done by nurses.
Okay, that can only be done by nurses. Good evening, Mr. Leo. Your program is very interesting. We pray that our government should look into the problems of nurses in our country. And Bishop Desmond writing there. Good evening to you, Bishop Desmond. I want to read the messages. Good evening, Mr. Liu and the group in the studio. There is this my baby girl of 9 years old. When she sees a nice, she talks about being a nice. No, you mean a nurse or a doctor. Even everything they put on, I should buy for them. Okay, I'm sure that your child has a call to be a nurse. Hi, good evening. I like your program. I'm in Ekondo Titi. Good evening to you too. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I appreciate you and your panelists. If they regulate the nursing studies and other areas of studies, imitate, I would love it. I had a problem with agricultural school director in Bamenda for asking why my 2 internships on my 2 years of studies is all on harvesting kernel. How will I grow before harvesting? Imagine nurses trained this way. Will they give good output? Jonah is writing from Bamenda. Yes, you wanted to say something about the question?
A viewer who asked about if she can do nursing with ordinary
levels. Yes.
Yes, and it's important for us to say if you really want to be a nurse, then you should have advanced level.
Okay.
Yes, and go in for 3 years training. There is another viewer too who talked about for her opinion, we should train nurses with science, or the entry requirement should be science, and it's one of the areas where there has been this conflict. Some people said no, since it's science, the entry requirement should be science. I use this opportunity to say there should also be that call, and we've had situations where we have people who are from arts background, because they have that call and that passion, who even do better than those with science. A good example, my aunt, while in Cameroon, did linguistics in the University of Boya. But when she traveled to the United States, she's today a registered nurse.
Okay.
So it's so far as it's a profession and it's call, we need to identify that call.
Okay. Mr. Liu, you are the best. I was ashamed when the Medicine Council had to swear in their doctors in Yaoundé. Nursing in this country is falling as the top professors and the 3 ministries involved in the training of nurses have refused to benchmark standards for this profession and properly regulate the training. Schools will train nurses without a needle and expect good outcomes. How? It's sad. Nurses, on one hand, should come together in one association and fight for the regulatory council. We are the majority and there is no hospital without a nurse. Okay, we have to... Okay, this one says, good evening. To start with, let the association press for the Ministry of Nursing in Cameroon, like in other countries. Bamboo Roman is writing from Akribi. Can we also end at this juncture, please? Because we'll keep talking, and I want to say thank you for coming.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Liu. And thank you all to all our viewers and our nurses out there. I just wish to say Happy Nurses Day, Happy Nurses Week in advance, and let's all come together so that we can fight for our own future to upgrade our image. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you to you, Mr. Secretary General.
Thank you, Mr. Liu, and to all our viewers. For those in Yaoundé and even out of Yaoundé, we are inviting you to join us to celebrate this International Nurses Day next week. See you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you to all the viewers. I think it's been a very interesting program. We are sorry if we've not been able to answer all of the questions that were asked, but it's just one of the outings, and we would have many outings, and hopefully we'll get to answer different areas. And we hope to see those who can make it during the international, the celebration of the International Nurses Day on the 12th of May. That is in Yaoundé, where we would actually be at the Fresh Planet Carrefour, Billy. But on the 10th and the 11th, there will be a seminar for leadership, which will also take place in Yaoundé, Fresh Planet Carrefour, Obili.
Okay, so if you are a nurse who is residing in and around Yaoundé or Douala or Bamenda, would want to join this association in celebrating this year's edition of the week dedicated to nurses, please, you can still contact me. I'll send their numbers to you. You will call them and they'll direct you on how you can join them, celebrate the day. We want to thank you, Desmond and Eli, for producing the program. Noel and Bertrand, we equally want to say thank you to you, Tabi Tambe Bryant, who is supervising the work out here. We love you all. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.